Now, when we go to the categories page, we have these categories available. If we click on a category, we get the products under that category. Remember, we created an endpoint called products category under the category ID, right? Products under the category ID. Now, when we click on a product, we get the product details like here. Hello and welcome back to our channel. In our last video, we discussed on how we can create an AI-powered backend where we created a couple of APIs. For example, the homepage APIs that returned us the banner image URLs, some hot products, some suggested categories. And then we created some endpoints that we use to add items to our cart and then finally doing the checkout. In this video, we are going to focus on creating a front end, meaning a website that will connect with those backend endpoints. So let's get started. So first, let's do a quick recap of the endpoints that we created. We had an app endpoint that returned us the store settings, then a home endpoint that returned us some banner images, some hot products, as well as some hot categories. Next up, we had an endpoint that returned us the store settings. And this will be one of our endpoints that we will be integrating. So let's get started with the front-end store setup. So as you know, this is all powered by AI. So we'll start with Visual Studio having GitHub Copilot already installed in it. On my computer, I have Node.js already installed. So we will be building the front end using popular front-end framework called NextJS. It's powered by Vercel. It's a very versatile and it's very robust platform. So we'll ask GitHub Copilot on how to create it. This is just for the demonstration purposes. Obviously, I hope that as you will follow along, you'll learn more about this, but let's see on how to get started. So we need to create a next app called, what should we call our store? Let's say we call it web store. Once we do it, it gives us a command npx create next app latest, and then it is naming it with the web store. Then it asks us to go to that directory, and then if we want to run it, we should be able to run it with npm run dev command. So if you go to view and then click on terminal, we'll have the terminal over here. So let's say create next app. @latest is not mandatory, so you can omit that as well, but I'll just go on how GitHub Copilot will say. So do you want to use TypeScript? It's up to you. I'll say no. You want to use ESLint? Yes. The element CSS? Yes. So these couple of prompts, I'll just skip through them. And there we go. It should be done in about a minute. And then we'll just run our web store. There we go. We got our web store. So we'll go to that directory called web store, and we'll run the command npm run dev to start the website. So it should be running on our local on this URL. So I'll just copy it. Alternatively, you can also click on it. So I'll go ahead and type it over here. There we go. Obviously, it's very basic, it's pretty standard. So let's go ahead and add some stuff, add some goodies to it. So if you go to our web store folder, first thing first. So our backend is hosted on an endpoint that's called this. So I'll just copy this URL. And one of the best approaches on how we can create and link this backend base API URL is to create an environment file. Since we are in the Next.js app, so I'll just create a file called .env.local. Equals, and I'll just paste that one. Now, wherever we need to get it, we should be able to access it through this process environment variables. For example, if I come up over here at the the page. Actually, we'll actually link them when we'll be creating our services. So for the time being, let's first start with the cleanup. So do we need these fonts? Are these fonts being used? No, I think we should get started with a clean slate. So in the global CSS, we have some styles. I'll just go ahead and paste the styles that I have created already. So here we got our styles. We are importing a few fonts from Google APIs. Then we are setting our body font family to Poppins. Then we are setting up the font for the H1 to H6, the headings on our website. Then the scroll behavior will be smooth. And then for our slider, we are setting up the next and before buttons color and then their sizes. Next up, in the layout.js, we are accessing this geese sans and geese mono. We don't need them anymore, so I'll just get rid of them. Over here in the title, we'll be changing our store title. So what should be our store title? We can call it AI store, generated by AI store team. And over here in the body, we're using a font, so I'll just remove that one. And then over here in the page.css file, we are rendering a few items over here. I think we don't need it, so I'll just create a default div with an h2 or h3, and we'll call it AI store. Let's save it, and then let's try to run it. So here's our very clean store. We have AI store as a title, and then AI store in the body. Now we need to create a favicon for our store. I leave that one as an exercise for you. There are a lot of websites over here in the internet where you can create a favicon. So I think you should be good to go. Now we need to install a few packages. I'll stop the website for a while. And then the packages that we are interested are for the backend communication with endpoints. We'll install Axios, very famous package. It's done. Next up, we'll be using Slick Carousel for our homepage. So I'll say npm. Rather than npm install, you can also go with I as well. So we'll say Slick Carousel. Done. Now, this latest version of the NextJS app has React.js 19. So it doesn't support a prior version of the React Slick, another package that we'll be using in our project. So I'll just go ahead and then say that, okay, try to find whatever you find compatible. Another package that we'll be using is going to be Spinners. Obviously, as of now, I don't think there is any React.js 19 supported package. So we'll go with the legacy peer dependencies. And that should be good to go. Now let's check our package.json. So the dependencies for our project are Axios, our package for communicating with the backend, then React Slick that we just installed, then our React Spinners, and then then Slick Carousel. On the dev dependencies, we have ESLint, Post CSS, and Tailwind CSS. I think we are all done on the setup part. So let's try to create some components. So I'll create a folder called components. In the components folder, we'll create a component for our top nav. So I'll call it topnav.js. Then we'll be needing another component for the footer. So I'll call it footer.js. Another one for the search bar on the top nav. So we'll call it searchbar.js. Now we can ask GitHub Copilot to give us a basic top nav. So create a top nav for an e-commerce store that has a logo, few links for few links pointing to which pages. For example, let's say we are going with the categories page and the products page, and then there should be a search bar and input field with input field for search, and then on the right we need to get the user name and then login or logout button. Let's see what it comes up with. Obviously we can tweak it and we can update it the way we want it, but let's look at what it has created. It has created a logo area that is pointing to ecom store. It has two navigation links pointing to categories and products, and it has a search box, search text box. Obviously it missed that search button but in the then on the right side it has a username and then a button for login or logout. So let's say, okay, that sounds good. So I'll come up over here and I'll say top nav. As you can see, it is being referenced from the components folder and then from the top nav. So I think we're all hooked up. Obviously it doesn't look very good, but it gets us off to a good start. Okay, now let's create a service that will communicate with the backend. So we'll create a folder called services, and then, oh, not a file, but a folder. And here we'll create a service for a service that will load the store settings. So we'll call it store service.js. And the purpose of the service will be to actually load these two things. Number one, the store settings, and number two, the homepage URLs, right? So we can just put them up in a store service. So we can also call it app service or whatever you would like. But I think for the time being, app settings is great. So let's hook up this endpoint so that we are able to call it from our service, and then eventually from any of the component or any of the web page, we'll be calling this service instead. So create a service called store service. So first of all, we'll import Axios from the Axios function. Then we can define a constant for the API URL that will read that URL from the, do you recall, from the env.local file, and the key was this, so process.env.this. And now we need to define a function that will get the store settings. So we're getting a lot of stuff already in it. So but we also need a try and catch block. So as you see, Visual Studio is very intelligent. It knows what I'm going to do. So I'll call this rather than get stores, I'll call this get settings. And then our endpoint that we would like to invoke is the app/settings. Let's just quickly check it. /app/settings. And we can also check the endpoint. If we go to console and if we click on try it out and execute, here is the URL, our base URL /app/settings. So I think we are off to a good start. So app/settings, and the response that we get comes up in a returned object called store. So we'll say, other than returning the data, please return the stored property back. And that should be it. So now we are able to invoke the service on any the store settings. For example, the store URL, the store name. These are sort of the things that we would be requiring a lot in our app. So for that, what the best practice is to use a context. So what is a context? So context is a place where you can hook up your shared state objects so that you can reference them wherever you want in your different components or in the services. So let's create a folder called contexts, and in the context, let's create a context for the store. Let's call it store context.js. Obviously, typing in everything may not be very helpful over here, so I'm going to copy and paste the stuff. Let's have a look at what we are doing. So we are importing few stuff from the React, and we are calling and we are going to call our store service rather than store services. So that should be it. And then what was the name of the method that we exported? For example, the name was get settings, so we'll say get settings. And over here we're creating a store context. Then we are creating a store provider that has a store property in it. So whatever will be the response of the backend, we are going to store that into an object called store, and then wherever needed, we'll be using this store property. For example, on the top nav, we'll be loading the logo from it, and then maybe at some places or on the footer or some other places, we could link up the store name or the about us or context pages as well. That is defining a function called fetch store, an asynchronous function that calls this get settings endpoint. Whatever response it gets, it stores that into the store, and then it is returning a store context provider with some with a property called with a prop called store. And over here we're creating a custom hook to use the store context, so wherever needed we can only call the use store, and then we'll get the right store information back. For example, on our case, when we call our settings endpoint, we get this logo URL. So if we want to get the logo URL, and if we want to dynamically pass this to our store, so for example this ecom store, wherever it is coming, if we would like to put the logo over here, we can do it. Actually, this code is good for the understanding purposes, but I'm going to actually change this code so that we can speed things up a bit. So I'll be just replacing this top nav with a predefined class, and we'll call it, let's say, top nav again. And we'll define a constant called top nav, and then we'll be exporting it. Okay. Actually, I'll just copy and paste a few files so that we can tuck this all quickly. So in the services, I'll drop a few files, but let me give you an overview of it. So cart service is calling a few endpoints. Now let's have a look at the endpoints and then the services that we have created. For the store service, we created a function called get settings, but obviously we would need one more service to get the home data. So I'm going to copy and paste that one in over here. So it should be like this. So in the store service we have, and we can call it store services or store service. So get settings, call the settings endpoint, it gets those settings and then returns it. Then the app/home, as you can see, it calls and gives us the banner images, hot products, and then the hot categories. We're going to return that data back. Our next service is the cart service. So let's have a look at that. So some of the endpoints for cart that we would need are the get cart. That will be over here. This is a get call. Then an endpoint for getting the cart summary over here. Next up, in order to read the categories, we created a category service. So let's have a look at it. Oops, it is actually hard coding the store URL. So we can do it just like we did in the other service. If you go to store service. We got the API URL from here, so we'll go back to cart service and then we'll just adjust it. So we'll just switch this. So this one was using fetch, which is a native JavaScript stuff, but we will be using it from the Axios so that we can keep the stuff consistent. Return response.data. And that's more like it. So this is the way on how we can create one or more endpoints. For example, this order detail service, we are using it to place an order, calling the post endpoint, like the post order endpoint with some information, and then the order ID endpoint to get the order information back. Okay, now I'll do the magic. Now we'll need a couple of pages for our web store. For example, the home page, the categories page, the all products page, and then the cart summary, and then the post checkout pages. So I'll just not waste all of your time. So I'll just copy and paste that stuff in to our app folder. That's more like it. For example, on the products page, will be, and that will have categories links on the left side, and then on the right side it will have a few products mapped to it. More on that, like we created also a login page, forgot password page, and some other pages, but I don't think we need to go into detail of everyone. Let's go and update our layout.js and then our page.js. So we're using our store provider, then a card provider under it, and then we're using a navbar. Then we are referencing the children, and then a footer. On the top, we would need a few imports. So let's do them right now. So do it like this. And then finally, coming back to the page, this page will be actually responsive. This will be the root page of our website. So it needs to display the home page banner and then the categories and the URL. So I'll just go ahead and copy and paste this stuff in so that we don't have to type it all. And there we go. Actually, I created the env file outside the web store. So I'll just move this one into our store. Now it looks better. So I'll just start npm run dev. And here we go. We got a shiny new store in. So this homepage is actually reading all the stuff from the backend. So if I'll just reload it, and if you just focus on the home, we're getting the settings first. That this logo, for example, food shop is coming from here. Obviously, there is an opportunity for improving the style, but let's focus on the functionality. Then on the home page, we have these banner images 1, 2, and 3. Then the hot products, and then the hot categories. Looks all great. Now, when we go to the categories page, we have these categories available. If we click on a category, we get the products under that category. Remember, we created an endpoint called products category under the category ID. Right? Products under the category ID. Now, when we click on a product, we get the product details like here. Now let's try to do a login. I just have a very secret password for this. So we were at adding a product to our cart. There we go. Now over here in the checkout screen, we are able to see what is in our cart and then the order summary, and then we're able to check it out. There we go. We got a shiny new order in place. Did you saw how easy it is to tuck your front end with the backend endpoints? So we looked at how to create a stunning homepage that had some banner images, some hot products or categories. Then we were able to add products to our cart, and then finally we were able to place an order. In our upcoming videos, we'll be going and using more AI features to enhance this user experience. And I'm excited to see you in the next one. So see you later. Bye bye.